excited to have you and love your work. And I think the first thing we should probably discuss is just your medium, because it's unique to everything else and everyone else in the series, because it involves wood, which is obviously very close to our hearts being guitar makers. So you want to enlighten us on the process and how you go about doing your work?
Absolutely. I go by SmittenKittenTx, and my main focus in printmaking is relief, mostly with linoleum and specifically wood. It's something that I take a lot of pride in, and it's something that I have some family background in. My grandfather was actually a wood carver, so it's something that I very proudly carry. And basically that entails taking a piece of wood, carving an image, and then transferring that with ink onto a piece of paper, leaving the image behind, and that's what's referred to as the relief.
Very cool. So how long does a typical piece take you when you're carving it out of wood?
Oh, the actual physical carving process can be very tedious, depending on how large, obviously, and how much detail each image has. It can be anywhere from like a couple of hours to a couple of months.
Wow.
It's a pretty big gap. Obviously, those bigger pieces require a lot more work, reworks and proofing, because sometimes, I look at it and it looks like it looks okay, and then I'll run it through the press and, you find issues and stuff that maybe needs to be cleaned up, especially when, with prints, they get kind of expensive, you don't want to be charging people for this, and there's spots and stuff, so definitely a little bit picky on the process and how I get those prints out, but it's good stuff. I think how complicated and tedious it is has definitely kept me interested in this medium and just really pushing forward and pushing my limits and my own boundaries and stuff, so it's a really fun thing to mess with.
So when you talk about larger pieces, about how large are those larger pieces?
We're talking anything from 18 to 24 inches, up to 2 by 3 feet. I think right now the biggest piece I've carved was 2 by 3 feet. That was a very large task. It took me about 3 months to design the piece, transfer it, and then carve it, and to get the full print series. It's a piece I'm very proud of, and I actually show that block at gallery shows and stuff whenever I get the chance.
Oh, nice. Nice. So on those bigger pieces, like, traditional paint medium, it's vertical on an easel or whatever. Are you doing this where your block is laid on a table, or is it vertical as well?
No, it's definitely laid flat. The tricky part about relief is the image, especially when you have lettering, has to be inverted. So it's like a mirrored image.
Oh, yeah.
So you have to carve all that stuff backwards and just hope for the best.
That's got to be tricky.
Yeah, it definitely is, especially when I'm freehanding stuff. With digital transfers, it's a lot easier because it's already just done. But hand transferring, you have to keep all that stuff into mind. What's going to be on your left is going to be printed on the right.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's a big thing with lettering.
So, I know a lot of, artists' minds, and I don't know if this is universal or not, but you can create a very detailed image in your mind of whatever you're going to be painting, carving, whatever. Does it work the same for backwards lettering? I mean, how do you accomplish that?
Absolutely. I mean, I definitely go in with like an idea of what I'm trying to do. I kind of have like an image in my head of like what image I'm trying to convey. I grew up old school tattooing back in the day, so like a piece of tracing paper and the light box is nothing foreign to me. I'm very glad to use those types of tools and all those kind of tips and tricks that I've picked up from different mediums. I'm definitely not opposed to just taking a piece of paper and flipping it over on transfer and then hand doing it. It's just a matter of making sure that image is coming through clearly.
Right. So on a bigger piece, and this is my only reference, and this is, sorry for the horrible reference, but imagine, here's what I imagine, right? Dumb visual, sorry, but playing pool, and your cue ball's like too far on the table. So when you have a big piece and you need to get in the middle to carve, like how do you get there?
I'll spin it around, I'll turn it around. I work off of these 2 massive flat files that I have, so I have plenty of work surface. Those bigger blocks definitely get trickier, and I kind of just, I have a pattern almost. I'll kind of go in a spiral with the image, kind of out and then working inwards. But I'll typically just pick a spot and keep going. I usually start from the bottom up. It really depends on the piece and how complicated. I usually leave the hardest pieces for last.
Right? Well, it makes sense now that backwards lettering is something you're capable of without having to do any kind of projection or anything. Because if you're constantly rotating that and you have to work from the side, you have to work from, the piece being upside down so you can work on the top, your brain is doing something there that my brain won't, for sure. So you're able to, that's crazy. That's crazy work, because I've done plenty of stuff, on the computer on my own. And I understand just how, at least for me, difficult that would be. So
I definitely had to learn how to embrace my mistakes and just kind of live with it. Especially when you're working with wood, it's so expensive. And, if you chunk a piece out of the wood, it's gone. You can't just glue it back on,
Right.
So
Yeah.
especially working with faces or like I said, lettering, it can be very tedious very quickly. And mistakes are just kind of part of the process, and I kind of just learned to incorporate that into what I'm doing. And it also too, like you mentioned, like moving and kind of rotating the image, it also kind of helps me get a different perspective on it, and I can add more detail or stippling. And there's been a couple of large scale pieces I've done on linoleum when I kind of turned it at an angle, and I'm like, wait a minute, it would be really cool if it had like maybe some shadow work here, or add some shading, or like some line work here. And it just kind of adds to the piece, and it also changes it. Because I do a lot of my blocks digitally designed, I'm on the road a lot, I'm on the airplane a lot, so I definitely utilize digital drawing a lot. It's a really cool way to just make it more analog and add those details that aren't going to be in the digital version, but it'll be on the print, and it kind of changes that image a little bit for the
Gotcha.
better, I think.
And that's another thing this is why I'm so enamored with your medium and what you do. If you're painting, if you're doing anything digitally, you can use multiple colors, you can use multiple shades, opacity levels, if you want to do shadowing, that kind of thing. But carving on wood, I can't even imagine that exists. So you're doing such a one-dimensional type of substrate, I guess, you're working with, and somehow you still get this insanely detailed piece. Like, how do you even approach that?
I've been playing with knives all my life.
Nice.
No, I've been playing with sharp objects all my life. A knife is not something that I'm really scared of, and there's a lot of commitment. I feel like I said, these massive pieces of wood that are plain, they're expensive, it's hard to replace. You can't just go and pick up another. You can, but it's just not really reasonable. So the detail work, I love being able to just fit as much detail work in what I'm doing. I think it makes it kind of unique to what I'm doing, and being able to carve that into a piece of wood, mirrored, and then transfer it onto paper is just an incredible feeling. And it I feel so accomplished when I have a final piece done. Once that print edition is done and signed, there's something very, very, very I felt like I achieved what I was after,
Right,
especially because some of these pieces take me so long, it's an entire year sometimes goes into it. So by the time I'm from digitally drawing the image to physically holding a print, it can be a whole year that has gone by, and it just feels very accomplished, and to have that detail added even on top of what I already had pictured, is I really think what keeps me just really motivated and inspired in this medium.
Yeah.
I've also had some incredible help and teachers along the way.
So who got you started? You mentioned your grandfather was a woodworker, right?
Yeah, my grandfather was a wood carver. His ashes are actually in a box that he carved specifically for his ashes.
Wow.
He was a troubled man. He definitely had some substance abuse issues, but when he was present, he was very resourceful, and he taught me a lot, and I'm very grateful for those skills. Linoleum and woodworking, relief printing, has always been something that caught my attention. It's something that I was very interested in. But what really kind of kicked that into overdrive was I was hanging out in LA with some friends, and there was a studio that I found. It's called Self-Help Graphics. The history behind this place is incredible. They do a lot of like Chicano art, and they're just very culturally active in their like communities and stuff. And there was a residency with a printmaker from Oaxaca. His name's Pavel Acevedo. He was working on a 3-foot by 2-foot wood panel, and I had never seen anything like that. The amount of detail that was going into it, and just like the knife work was insane. It blew my mind, you know, like I had never seen anything like that, much less on that scale. And every time he had open studios, I'd like make it a point to go. And he noticed that I was there a lot, so he was willing to teach me. And it was just, because of that, I made a lot of other connections with other artists. But I was able to use a press for the first time, learning how to use oil, like oil-based inks. That was a big one. You know, it turned it more from like a crafting thing to like an art career move. Yeah. You know, it was just that shift that I think I needed, and I think the timing was just right. You know, it's this place I kind of just stumbled upon with some friends, and it turned into this whole thing. And I have works featured in museums now, which blows my mind.
That's incredible. That's awesome. Something to be proud of, for sure.
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely, too. And, like, you know, like I said, I had a lot of help. And, you know, people opened a lot of doors for me. And I just felt like it would be a disservice to not do anything with that, you know?
Right. True. So do you always think of the final medium, like in the print? Or do some pieces, they just stay on wood?
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely done some pieces where people are like, oh, that would look cool on a shirt. I'm like, okay, well, I'm a little bit more open to that kind of stuff now. There's definitely pieces that kind of fit better on, like, T-shirts. And, you know, and some stuff is just, it feels, like, personal almost. And I kind of just want it to stay on paper.
Right,
yeah.
Right.
And that is also another thing that sometimes I do commissions and stuff, but I typically keep all of the blocks that I make.
Gotcha.
My goal at some point is to have a show and have all of my deities displayed as like the actual physical wood blocks.
Yeah.
Displayed as like an installation. So even if I do commission work for people, they keep the prints, I keep the block.
That's great. Are they all the same thickness?
Mostly.
Because gosh, what if you just lined a wall with all your blocks or
Yeah,
something?
some of them are on linoleum, stuff with more details on linoleum because I can get more prints out of linoleum.
Okay.
Wood is porous, and I do have to clean up those images over time. I'm a little bit more limited. For example, you know, if I run a piece of linoleum, I can get 50 prints, no questions asked. If I have a piece of wood, I can get maybe 13 to 15 prints.
Oh, wow.
So those print editions are usually more limited. Mm-hmm. And I have a tendency to just be more careful with those blocks because the wood is a lot more temperamental and like sensitive. And I don't want to ruin those pieces, you know. I want to be able to get the most prints I can, and then that's how I edition stuff. You know, sometimes I can get 9, sometimes I get 13. It just depends.
So is there, knowing wood and the variance from different species can vary greatly. So I would almost guess that there's an ideal wood to carve with, but then also there's a different ideal wood for the ink and the nature of printing.
I made the horrendous mistake of like just buying expensive, beautiful wood. Mm-hmm. Hardwood was so hard. I did like a piece of mahogany wood, and it was just brutal. It was so hard on my hands, and it was really hard to carve. It's hard to get detail. There was also like really natural striations. I mean, you know, with wood it has grain, and that affected the piece a lot. And something I never really considered. You definitely want to go with like a softer wood, cherry wood, maple wood's pretty ideal. Don't do mahogany or hardwood, unless you're willing to pay the price. You know, with very large scale projects, a very affordable option. I mean, definitely wear a mask, but with any kind of wood carving. But MDF panels are very inexpensive, and you can get some really large scale stuff for like $50. You know, which is like, you know, it's cool to have that option. You know, but definitely for like the nicer pieces, I have a tendency to just get a really nice piece of wood and go with that.
Right. Yeah. So then how many different tools do you use? I'd imagine there's thickness on the blade and
got V gouges, you got C's, you got, I mean, I really like using these chisel tips, and that's how I get all my stippling. They are wood knives, but I probably alternate. I mean, I have like 50 different knives. I definitely have a problem. Power grips are my favorite. Those are Japanese instruments, and they will slice through wood like butter.
Wow.
And it's smooth.
Wow.
I very rarely have to sharpen them. But yeah, there's so many different ends on the knives that you can get different effects with. I do my line work typically with a V gouge. I do a lot of stippling with the chisel tips, a lot of C gouges,
Nice.
just to chunk out those big pieces all at once.
Yeah, and I can imagine. That's great because carving through wood and rarely having to sharpen the tool is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Because those things can just dull quickly unless it's a diamond blade or something, But so the piece that is on the guitar, let's talk a little bit about that.
So the image on the guitar, that is a deity known as BlkWhtGry. That is a representation, Lord of the Earth. This is a piece that I've really had a long time, like it's been a long time coming. I've been wanting to do this study for a very long time. I've done probably 3 or 4 studies of this one deity. I wanted to make sure that I got it right. All of obviously this stuff is culturally significant, so I never want to, be disrespectful or dismissive of that aspect. But definitely what makes this creature this deity, and just staying true to that, but also adding my own flair to it without just, kind of tracing it off of like an anthropology book, which is definitely a thing some people do. I refuse to do it. It's probably took me about 6 months to design. The actual carving process I'm still working on, that's probably going to be another 6 months. It's going to probably be a full year project.
Oh, wow.
These larger scale pieces, definitely, it's going to be a 24 by 36.
Nice.
So it's going to be a very big piece. I'm really excited to see how it comes out. I'm horrified at the transfer and just how well it's going to take. But, I've been working on it for so long that even if the transfer doesn't take, I'm fully confident I'd be able to just kind of hand draw it in.
Oh, nice. That's good. And so there's this piece, does it contain multiple characters, deities?
It's just the one. There's some lore that this deity was chopped in half. Half became the sky and half became the mountains and the earth.
Oh, very
so
cool.
It's a representation of the earth and the sky, cumulatively.
Nice. That's great.
Yeah, it's a beautiful piece. It's a deity that I love. I love reading about it, and just there's so many different elements, and I've seen so many different representations of it, that it's just really something that I really wanted to put on paper, and now on a guitar.
There it is. So the foundation of these stories and these characters and lores, where does it originate?
These are all Mexica deities. Mostly there's been some projects where I've incorporated other cultures, just to kind of highlight the similarities. For example, back in 2022, I did this triptych piece where I really wanted to focus on the similarities of some of these Mesoamerican pre-Hispanic cultures. And my thought process was based on the creature Tlaloc. It's a very well-known rain deity. He's associated with fertility, rainstorms, thunder. It's basically our version of Thor.
Nice.
Very similar backstory, but I noticed that Mayan culture and Zapotec culture had something very similar. So I did 3 representations of these 3 deities that all represented the same thing, and it's really just this idea of ideas migrating. It was Mayan, Zapotec, and Mexica. And it was really beautiful to see those 3 pieces, and people are like, well, what is this about? I'm like, it's about unity, It's about having more things in common than we realize.
Right.
And how these ideas and these stories just migrate, just like us, And it's something that was very important to me, and it's something that I just felt really needed to be put on paper and for people to see. And it was also like at the time, the biggest pieces I had ever worked on, they were 18 by 24 wood blocks. And that was a really huge undertaking at the time. I was like, halfway through, I'm like, what the fuck was I thinking?
Right.
I was so far deep, but at that point there was no turning back. I already had this image in my head. I already saw like visually like what I wanted to represent, and it was there. So I just had to commit.
Yeah. No, that's true. Yeah. And it's crazy, how similar everybody is, different but similar.
Yeah, absolutely.
With pasts and all kinds of stuff, and it's so interesting. So what has been do you have a favorite that you've done in the past that you'd like to highlight? Because anything that I've seen of yours definitely has your signature style. But is there anything that kind of stands out as for you that I really am proud of this piece or appreciate this piece? There's
two projects specifically. Obviously this one, because seeing it on a guitar like that was something very special to me. It's something I never imagined. So just kind of visualizing that and opening that door for more like instruments and like the possibility of that. I had done some work for one of my favorite drummers in the past, so that was cool. But moving to guitar, that was a big leap. So this is a project that I'm very, very proud of. The other project that I worked on is this whole last year was I did an 18 by 24 linoleum block for my good friend Pineapple. He celebrated back in May his 20-year anniversary for Shaman Modifications.
Oh wow!
His request was for me to make an image he kept it pretty open. He gave me like some ideas he had, but he asked that I add the number 20 and that I add his mentor as part of the image. This is his mentor, but also a man that I also very much respect and looked up to. I grew up in like body modification and that whole kind of like scene. So like having somebody that I looked up to wanting me to basically etch his mentor in wood was insane. Like it blew my mind, and it also like what an honor. He could have picked anybody. He works in the tattoo industry. He could have picked literally anybody to do this project.
Right.
And he came to me and he asked, "I want you to do this." And it felt very accomplished. It was a beautiful piece, and being able to show that piece is also just I get to talk about it, and it's amazing. Being part of that family is insane because Pineapple has stood in my corner and he's been very supportive of me since the very beginning, and I honestly don't think I'd be where I'd be without them.
Nice. Yeah, that's so cool. It's interesting too how different things could be different, carry different meaning, and some sentimental, some just carry a different mission to them.
I know at first he was a little bit hesitant because he's like, this is culturally significant stuff, and he's like, I'm not Mexican, but and I said, you know what? I mean, honestly, if anybody has an issue with it, all you have to say is that the artist is Mexican.
Right.
Take it up with them,
you
know?
Sure.
And, he gave me creative liberty, so I ran with it,
Nice. That's good. Yeah, I know having your hands tied sometimes when somebody asks you to do something. I know that's big in the tattoo world, I tried. I don't know if I succeeded, but I came with ideas and I tried to say, hey, run with it. But yeah, I think that works the best because the artist mind is so much better for art than the average person. So you just have to trust the artist in the process. So
I honestly I'm very fortunate that I get to be so picky about the commission work that I take on. I say no to a lot of projects because honestly that's why I stopped tattooing. I didn't like commission work.
Right.
I want to do what I want to do. It's just that simple, and I really don't feel like I should have to compromise my work. My work is my work. And if you came to me, then that was for a reason.
Yeah.
And I feel like if we don't have that trust or that kind of exchange, then we don't need to be doing business together.
Right. And I think ultimately that's the goal for most artists is to be able to stand on your own work and have people recognize and almost, basically give you a blank check and say, do what you want because I trust.
Honestly, like with tattoo artists and stuff, like that's how you get the best work. Give them some creative liberty, man. Let them do what they want to do. Ask them, what are you good at? What do you like to do? What do you want to do? Show me your portfolio. That's usually how I get the best my friend Cruz is like that. I've gotten some of the like his best pieces, and it was literally just me giving him creative liberty on what he wants. I give him an idea, and he said, "This is what I got," and it's perfect.
Yeah. Now I can kind of understand a little bit of the flip side of tattoos, because if let's say I commission you to do an art piece that's going to go on my wall. If I like certain elements and don't like certain elements, it's not the end of the world. But you're going to be carrying a tattoo with you on your body for the rest of your life. So I kind of get reluctance from people on that. At least I know, my experience in getting them. I was always very anxious about what was going to be presented by the tattoo artist. I was like, oh my God,
I hope I like this.
Yeah, exactly.
That's real.
But I spent so much time researching the artist over art. I mean, I knew basically what I wanted to do, but I was looking for nuance in the artist, and it's like, okay, this is the style I want. And then once you find that artist and you're like, okay, I am comfortable with you, that's when you can give them sort of the blank check of you do you, And so I think stylistically, and once you trust the artist.
That's the big word, is having that trust.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
It's a relationship just like anything else.
Yeah, it really is.
Especially when they're jabbing you with needles for hours on end, torturing you.
Yes.
And then, can I get a picture afterwards?
Yeah, exactly.
It's real.
Yeah. Anecdotal, maybe somebody will get something from this who's about to do tattoos, but I learned late in the process from, the hours and hours and hours and sessions that I've been under so for example, this elbow hurt like hell. This one, not so much. I think there was a reason for that. This guy hit me late in the session with the elbow. And basically, you're probably aware too, but your mind is mentally blocking out the pain as best it can. And in the beginning, it's this annoyance, right? Over the course of 8 hours, it starts to get your brain can no longer block it out. And it just you're starting to sweat, and it's just, you can't block it out anymore.
I get the shakes.
I've gotten, especially, oh my God, up here, so sensitive onto the, oh my God. Anyway, but your tattoo work, was that your first artistic medium, or did you just kind of experiment with different mediums?
Yeah, I honestly, I got my start, I was working at this head shop. They grew up in counterculture, and I always had my sketchbook, and I would just kind of sketch random stuff. I've always liked art. I've always drawn some form. A lot of times I would just see something I liked, and then I would sketch it out. As far as drawing my own stuff, though, it wasn't until I started working at a tattoo shop. There was a guy at the head shop that I worked with, and he's like, "You're always drawing." He's like, "You should talk to the tattoo artist in the back." I was like, "Man, I don't really want to bother him, And he was looking through my sketchbook, and I was like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "These are good. Like, you should maybe take a stab at it." And I'm like, "Okay." So I started tattooing, and I tattooed for a few years. I wasn't crazy about it, and I was trying to figure out, like, what about it I didn't like. I dabbled with body piercing, and I didn't like it at all either. It's like not really something I was going for. It just something about it, and I think it goes back to, it was commission work at the end of the day, and I just wasn't really at the point where I could only pick and choose what I wanted to do. Like, you kind of have to be an established artist, and this was like early 2000s too. It was a different game back then. Yeah. Like, I remember specifically, like, tattoo artists were like, if you use Google images, like, you're not even a real tattoo artist. And like, now every tattoo artist has an iPad, or
right.
like even I have an iPad,
Mm-hmm.
But it was just a different time, and like, there were a bunch of like kind of old head tattoo types, and where like, if you're not just tattooing, you're not a real tattoo artist. And if I got a lot of that in the art community too. I was really surprised, when I was going through like all my like funeral directing, embalming stuff. Some people were like, "You're not even a real artist. You have a day job." And I was like if facial feature restoration wasn't an art form,
Yeah.
But like, I also understand that people don't really understand what entails that kind of work, Yeah. And I've never really been upfront about that, like that kind of work that I do. It's just something that I kind of rather keep to myself, but I also don't feel the need to like explain myself, you know?
Yeah.
Like I don't feel the need to be validated, you know?
Right.
I'm the only one that can validate myself, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's, that's kind of a common thing. Like music and bands will be the same way. Certain communities are very supportive, and then other communities are very judgmental, and, you're an outsider, or maybe there's jealousy that maybe, you're onto something and you're capable of doing something that they aren't, and so they're frightened by that or something.
Yeah, I mean, definitely like the digital aspect of that. But it's interesting that you mentioned that, because like in different communities, you have these different kind of interactions. And I think with printmaking, it was the first time where I was like in this kind of community that was very open and like welcoming even, and like was willing to share information. It wasn't like the kind of tattoo body modification community that I was used to, that like everybody kind of like gatekeeps and like does their own thing, and like nobody's valid but me, and like that's it. So coming from that kind of background into like just this community based oriented driven thing was like, okay, I think I found something I like here. It was more like community based. And I mean, like even in Mexico, like you can go to Oaxaca and go to one of the talleres in the studios over there, and you can just go print. People will teach you,
Wow.
It's a very communal thing.
Yeah.
Especially with like wheat pasting projects and stuff like that. That stuff goes hand in hand.
Wow. So where would you say that this art form, wood carving relief in general, is most utilized? Where's the popularity?
I mean, historically, obviously Japanese wood block is, that's centuries old. But, Mexico, honestly, relief print is a very, not just a community thing, but it's very much a political thing. As an artist, it's your kind of responsibility to reflect what you're seeing in the times. And, you have these great artists like Leopoldo Mendez and like, Posada, that were like just pivotal in kind of laying the groundwork for people, like, they walked so people like me could run,
Right.
And, it's like a history and ties that I'm very, very proud of. And it's something that I absolutely, I love having a connection to.
Yeah, definitely. So do you see any kind of evolution in your work from where you started to where you are now, and potentially where you want to be? Do you have any grand ideas?
Yeah, I've been working a lot with my friends in Long Beach, Munzon Gallery. Edgar and Liz are amazing, and they actually provide a studio space that I can work on larger formats. My press caps at like 1824. They have a bigger press, so I print with them a lot, and they have been encouraging me to do these just massive pieces. So I think we're just going bigger.
Yeah.
Actually having like other artists help me carve pieces. I did a really cool collaborative piece with Edgar in the past. And I just like when you find an artist that you can work well with, and you're both responsible and you get your stuff done on time, it's really a beautiful thing, because like I'm able to kind of cut these carve times in half, having that extra hand, but also having like the creative liberty to design the image, and them willing to work with it is also amazing, to put their name on it. That was actually a really huge. I did it with Secret Gallery actually in Albuquerque. It's called Arte Sin Fronteras, and I transferred this block. I carved the deity. I passed it off to my friend Edgar while they were here in town. They drove it back to Long Beach. He finished cutting it and then printed the edition. So that was a completely like 50-50. We went all in. It's a massive block, and it's a beautiful piece. And the fact that we get to show that all over the country is just amazing. It's something I'm very proud of. So it's definitely something we're working on, some really big stuff.
Very cool. That's awesome. So for these galleries that you do, are there requirements for galleries, since it's just sort of my lack of knowledge, for sizing or mediums or anything? What kind of requirements do you have to modify what you would normally do in order to meet demands for these galleries?
So a lot of times when I get approached by galleries that want to work with me, typically they'll have like a theme or this kind of idea that they want to go with. They obviously came to me because they felt that I matched that kind of theme or whatever direction that we're trying to go in. A lot of times my biggest issue with galleries and stuff is that they want exclusivity. So like if I make a piece, they want it to be either brand new, never shown before, and they want it just for that show. Gotcha. So like I can't put it in a different show in a different state. I do a lot of stuff all over the place, so it is a little bit more difficult kind of navigating like multiple shows going on at, like I think April was probably one of my craziest months, and every single gallery that I worked with all wanted their own piece. Wow. Never before shown. So I'm like, okay, luckily I have catalogs of stuff that I work on in my downtime, so I had plenty of work to choose from, but I definitely get stipulations. A lot of times it's size restrictions, because if it's like a group exhibition where there's multiple artists, they just have to take into consideration the space. I've definitely been kneecapped a couple of times on space, because I want to kind of show off this big piece, and they're just like, well, we don't have that much room, which sucks, but like you just work with what you can. I definitely try not to like waste opportunities like that. I try to get my stuff out in front of as many people as I can.
Yeah. Now you mentioned having a gallery coming up, right? That's running through, is either now and running through September?
Yeah, it started up in April, but I was actually approached at the end of last year by Irie, and she was doing a programming with the Chicano Park Museum. They did a Apprentice protest, and I was one of the artists selected for that. Chicano Park Museum is just, like the fact that I get to say that sentence is insane. The fact that I have work up until September with them is incredible. If you're in San Diego, please go check it out. There's some of the best printmakers that I get to show work with. And it's just a very culturally significant place, and it's something that to me was a very big a bucket list thing. Like never did I imagine that I'd be having work in that kind of like institution, Yeah. Especially with a lot of galleries and stuff, I get a lot of pushback because I am self-taught. Like I said, I had a lot of great teachers and stuff, but I don't have like a bachelor's or a master's in fine arts. Right. So I definitely, there's a lot of places that only want like scholastic, they want you to have paperwork, and I'm self-taught. I don't have that, so I definitely get a lot of pushback from places, but it is definitely an honor and like very something I'm proud of to be able to show work with, in these types of institutions. Like I said, especially when they normally wouldn't have somebody like me there.
Yeah, definitely. I know that's kind of an issue. It's an interesting requirement for art to have a formal education. I understand it in a lot of ways, but it's kind of the end result and the production and the journey to getting to the skill level all has merit wherever that begins, wherever it ends. Some things like self-taught artists might not be able to teach at a accredited university because they are required to have a bachelor's degree or a master's degree. And I get that in a way, but it's definitely interesting to hear that a gallery is going to require something like that,
You'd be surprised.
That's kind of blows my mind. I'm not even sure why.
Yeah, even sometimes like if they'll have open calls and stuff like that, they're like, it's only open to MFA, BFAs.
Wow.
Yeah, there's like certain presses back home that won't even work with me because they're like, well, you don't have a BFA, we don't want you.
Wow. So, I mean, I guess some will say, oh, you need a certain, following requirement, or you need to have been in so many galleries beforehand, or, they're trying to vet you in one way or the other, I guess, and I guess that's their chosen way of vetting. Still odd, in my opinion. I'm sure yours too. But the competition is high. There's a lot of artists out there. So anything that you can get into and show your work is definitely something cool. But I love your work, and I can't wait to see what you do next. And with this running through September, can you only do one gallery at a time?
No, not. I would never limit myself to that. A lot of times too, like I said, they reached out to me at the end of last year. That show barely went up April. It's up until August or September. I'm sorry. So a lot of times I know ahead of time I'm doing this in the future.
Yeah.
I usually have a schedule that I go off of. April was just completely insane to me. I don't know what I was thinking. I had like 6 shows running and like in different states. And I'm like, and I think it's from the time you contacted me for this project. And I was
wow.
like, I'm so down to do this, like, fuck it, let's go,
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I definitely would never limit myself to just one gallery at a time. I don't think I would work with somebody like that if they
Right.
wanted me to just. I know sometimes like representation from a gallery. I think the only place I would ever, let's say that they represent me is AO5 Gallery. They're in Austin. Todd has been just absolutely incredible. That man has been in my corner and really put me on. Like, he really put me on, and the fact that I get to share space with some of the artists that I, living and dead, that I looked up to. He's got one of the biggest collections of like Dr. Seuss artwork, like sculptures,
wow.
paintings. He's got Salvador Dali originals.
Wow.
My stuff's hanging in the same building as that. Hugh
That's
Syme,
nuts.
Hugh Syme doing
Wow.
like all the Rush artwork. Like, I'm a huge Rush fan. So the fact that my stuff's just around the corner. Jermaine
Yeah.
Rogers. I'm a huge fan of Jermaine. He was doing all the gig posters. When I was
Yeah.
growing up. So
Yeah.
the fact that my setup is right next to him is insane.
That's phenomenal. I mean, when somebody's got your back like that, and then you get to share space with your your not mentors, but your just
The people that
your
inspired
heroes.
me.
Yeah.
Exactly. The people that inspired me at like a young age to want to do gig posters. And like, Jermaine has like more drawing, like caricatures and stuff. And I'm like, I felt like there was space for me, like I could do these kind of weird creatures and stuff and still have room in like this really fancy gallery.
Right.
It really painted the picture of like, this can totally be a thing for me. And I wouldn't be here if I hadn't had that kick.
Yeah, yeah. And the confidence level thing is huge too, because sometimes when you're starting out in anything, you don't feel like necessarily like, oh, do I belong with these people? But then, a gallery decides to show your work right alongside your heroes, and all of a sudden it's like, wow.
Oh,
I can.
the imposter syndrome is so real.
It
It
is.
really is.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
like, I was updating my artist CV, and having like 6 different museums under my belt.
Yeah.
Galleries all over the country. Like, that speaks for itself.
Right.
Like, I put in the work and I got the results that I wanted.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
I wanted to be seen.
Yeah.
I'm seen.
Definitely. Yeah. So how's that feel? I mean, is it a journey where there's ups and downs to it, or is it how do you embrace it?
Absolutely. Like, some of the projects, I'm very ambitious sometimes. Like, and like, I have this kind of grandiose idea of what I want to do, and then halfway through I'm ripping my hair out going, what the fuck was I thinking? Like,
Right.
You have hundreds of hours into this piece, and it's like, there's no turning back. You just have to commit. And it kind of goes along with like my restorative work when I was like in the prep room. It's like, you reach a point of no return, and you just kind of have to commit and keep going with it. It's just part of the game we play.
Yeah. Yeah. So you spoke a little bit about the evolution of where you think bigger pieces is kind of the big one. Is there a dream job, I guess, or commission that you'd like to do? Tour poster kind of thing, or a certain gallery, or
Hitting Chicano Park Museum was a huge one for me. There's definitely a couple other institutions similar to that I kind of have my eye on. I think I've seen my work on shirts, I've seen my work on drum heads, I've seen my work on guitars, I've seen my work. I would love to see it on an album cover. I think an album cover would be my next move. I'm talking to somebody about that, so that
Very
might be
cool.
in the near future, but I can't really talk about that right now. But yeah, no, I think an album cover would just be absolutely incredible, and it would be just a really amazing way to just set that in stone and know that I'm here and I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'm super proud that we were able to get you to do the art for the guitar. It's such a beautiful piece, and it fills the space so well. And excited to get this out and going. And anything that you would want to tell a future owner of one of these guitars?
it's just an honor and a privilege to be able to put this on a guitar like this. And I've probably told you a bunch, but thank you so much for having me and like reaching out. Obviously this isn't like stuff I would normally do, but it just felt very like organic and like a really good direction to go in. But I really am looking forward to these pieces going to good homes. You have a great team, and like seeing everybody here and meeting everybody. I really love the way the piece was utilized for the guitar, and that it, made it fit. It's a beautiful piece, and feel free to reach out and tag me and message me if you get one, because I'd love to see people playing it.
Absolutely, yeah. Website, where should they find you?
My website is sktx.art. You can find me on Instagram. I'm usually on Instagram the most. But yeah, I post up my regular projects and stuff. I'm trying to get more like a blog going on my actual website, so that I can post projects like this where people can still access it without necessarily like buying something.
Yeah.
So I'm working on that currently. Once I'm able to get this bad boy posted and featured, that'll probably be the first thing I put on there.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. Well, it was great talking to you, and I'm looking very much forward to working with you in the future, and best of luck.
Amazing. Thank you so much.